You've spelunked into the Matt Cave. Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, we've got a lot to talk about. Transfer portal updates, the Holy War basketball edition, and the Utah Mammoth. Yeah, it doesn't sound like a lot, but believe you me, it's a lot. So thank you all so much for being here. As always, follow me on those socials. Basically, it's Instagram and Facebook. You can also find me on YouTube, the Matt Cave Podcast. And yeah, let's dive into things. So first, let's start with the transfer portal update, and let's start with the Aggies up north. They did lose Braden Pegan to the University of Utah. He was a big-time get for the Utes. Big-time replacement for Ryan Davis for Utah. But this is about Utah State. So they do lose Braden Pegan there. He was an all-Mountain West first-team selection, so that hurts. But that's just the nature of college football as it is right now. The smaller schools it's almost like AAA baseball going up to the majors. It's just how it is. So it'll be next man up for Bronco Mendenhall and crew for Utah State, but they did get McKay Hillstead to return to Utah State after his transfer to BYU, where he lost out on the starting position for BYU to Bear Bachmeier. I don't know why I blanked on his name, but I did. So Bear Bachmeier, he's there. Other losses for Utah State: Anoka McGow, injury-riddled season for him at linebacker. And then, other than that, not much in the terms of production for the Aggies to lose. So that's not bad. They do lose their kicker, Tanner Rinker, but other than that, I mean, looking pretty good as far as retaining talent for Bronco Mendenhall and company. So, I mean, other than losing Braden Pegan, they didn't really lose all that much. I mean, they lost Ike Larson to the NFL. I'm still convinced he can be an NFL player. And just good stuff out of Logan, really. They keep basically everyone. So that's the update for the Aggies. They do bring in McKay Hillstead. And the transfer portal closes on the 17th of January. So that's a week from basically yesterday as of me recording this episode. So I'll have a more wholesome picture for you, a more fleshed out review of the transfer portal as it stands when everything ends. So let's move on to Utah and the Utes. So the Utes do lose a lot of talent. It's been well documented wherever you listen or watch or read. They lost Teo Johnson, Smith Snowden, John Henry Daly to the transfer portal. They lost Isaac Wilson, which is kind of funny. He's going to Colorado, of all places. Like, Isaac, dude, you're not playing there. You're just not. I don't know. I mean, Coach Prime is a wizard with his words. He really is. But that carousel at the quarterback position that there was last year, I don't think you're playing, Isaac, but best of luck to you. Jonah Lea'ea is going to Michigan as well. Dallas Vekalahi, defensive lineman, he's going to Penn State. Teo Johnson, like I said, he's going to UCLA. Smith Snowden is still up in the air. A lot of people are saying he's either going to go to Michigan or BYU. We've heard that before with John Henry Daly, so he's going to Michigan. And other than that, not much in terms of like production loss. JJ Buchanan is in the transfer portal as well for now. The big one for Utah, obviously, is Devin Dampier. What is he going to do? With Bryce Underwood saying he's coming back to Michigan, I don't see Devin Dampier going to Michigan as well because he's just not going to beat out Bryce Underwood. That guy is he's just better. So that's where it is. Transfers into Utah. Obviously, Braden Pegan, like I said, from Utah State, a really good wide receiver, first-team All-Mountain West for Utah State last season. He's going to come in and be a day one producer for the Utes. Other than that, they've got somebody from Ohio State, Isaiah Kima, O-lineman, Elijah Reed from Akron. He was an All-MAC performer. So there is some talent coming in, just nothing that really pops off the page like a Braden Pegan. So he's the crown jewel of the transfer portal for the Utes. one to keep an eye out for, I already said his name, but Elijah Reed. I think he can slot into that cornerback position and do wonders for Morgan Scalley and his defense. So it's the recruiting class that really needs to be kept together. Kelvin Obut, the 5-star O-lineman from Idaho, that one will be interesting to see because he signed on back in July of last year. But obviously the coaching changes have happened. And the O-line coach that I talked to you about last week went to Michigan. So that'll be interesting to see. Same thing with Salisi Moa. And I know he re-upped his commitment even after all of the upheaval. But that'll be another interesting to look at. Another interesting guy to look at as this process moves forward for the Utes. Obviously the Utes offensive line coach is Jordan Gross. He was a stellar offensive lineman. Like, we're talking borderline Hall of Famer. And so that, I think, could be enough to keep Obut in Salt Lake City. But again, I mean, just interesting times for the Utes. Upheaval that they haven't experienced in, since before Ron McBride, really. There hasn't been upheaval like this at the University of Utah. So, boy, I'll try to keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on there. But yeah, let's move on to BYU and what Kalani Sitake has done. This one's going to be a little bit of a longer segment, so buckle in. Here we go. So as far as outgoing transfers, the big hits are Marcus McKenzie and McKay Hillstead. Marcus McKenzie was a defensive back. He transferred out, as well as McKay Hillstead, the backup quarterback to Bear Bachmeier last year. Other than that, Tavion Beasley is another one who spent a lot of time in the BYU defensive backfield. He's out as well. But nothing that really is a gut punch. No John Henry Daly's here. No Smith Snowdens or Teo Johnsons. Like, guys that are talented but can be replaced with what Kalani Sitake has. Big one that just recently happened was Evan Johnson. Nobody knew what he was going to do. He is coming back to BYU as well. So I may not be in love with the defensive coordinator hire by Kalani Sitake and company, but it obviously worked. Fred Warner, Kyle Van Noy, Sione Takitaki, some big names in the BYU linebacker lore, I guess you could say, have been praising Kelly Poppinga and his coaching. So that's two humongous endorsements and a third really big one for Kelly Poppinga. So I hope I'm wrong. I really do. That's one of the things that a lot of people kind of misunderstand, I guess, about me, is I want to be proven wrong when I say things, especially when it's about like stuff that I'm not in love with, stuff that I don't think is going to work. I want to be proven wrong. I do not want to come back here in a year and a half or 2 years and say, yeah, I called it, especially on this one. Some of them I do like to crow and prance about and peacock about, but not this one. I hope I'm wrong on this one. So overall, the retention is fantastic. They kept Parker Kingston, Trey Alexander. I mean, I could give you a list that goes on and on and on. The biggest ones for me are Andrew Gentry. He's staying. Keanu Tanuvasa is staying. And Falateo Satuala is staying as well. So Parker Kingston's a big one too. Tay Nakua is a pretty big one. I think he's going to get a lot more reps at wide receiver because BYU isn't really dipping its toes into bringing people in from the transfer portal so far. They've got two guys. They're both 4-star rated by different scouting services as far as coming into the portal. Braden Pegan, for example, was a 4-star get for the University of Utah out of the transfer portal. So Kyler Casper, wide receiver from Oregon, 6'6", 210. That's the kind of receiver BYU just didn't get in the past. I mean, yeah, they got Mitch Matthews, but he was slow. And so most of the time, it's guys like Austin Collie or Chase Roberts, 6'2", 6'3", pretty quick, sure hands. Nothing like Kyler Casper. So that's pretty huge for BYU to get. He signed on January 8th. And then Walker Lyons. This is the big one. So Walker Lyons, if that last name sounds familiar, yes, he is the brother of Ryder Lyons, the 5-star quarterback that committed to BYU this past offseason. And they are doing everything they can to keep Ryder Lyons in the fold, which I think is brilliant because there has been reporting coming out saying that Rider Lions could reopen his recruiting when he comes back from his mission in a year. Totally possible, up to the kid. Do whatever is best for you. So by getting his brother, this is not just for Rider Lions, by the way. Walker Lyons is a 4-star tight end in the transfer portal. He's going to have a big role in the offense because there's just nobody else in that tight end room that I think is more talented than him. So he comes in, he's a difference maker almost right away. Both of these guys are juniors. Walker Lyons has 3 years of eligibility remaining if he wants to use all 3. Kyler Casper has 2 years of eligibility remaining if he wants to use both. So huge offensive gets for the Cougars. And then their defensive retention is almost like going into the portal and getting talented guys as well. Because another name I didn't mention was Isaiah Glasker. He said he's coming back. But then you got Bruce Mitchell, who was the center for the team. He's coming back. I mean, there's just so much talent coming back for BYU. I was surprised at how much is coming back. Even Bodie Schoonover is coming back. So this team is looking to be loaded heading into next season, and that's not to mention all the 4 stars they got from the recruiting trail. Guys who could be instant contributors, like Ty Gotchi from Englewood, Colorado. He's a 6'6", 225 tight end. That's instant production. Brock Harris from St. George, 6'6", 238. Juni Moala, 6'4", 250. He's a 4-star defensive lineman. So this talent coming in and the talent that's being retained by Kalani Sitake is incredible. So while I disagree with the defensive coordinator hire, overall, Kalani Sitake, there is a reason that BYU and its backers shelled out so much money to keep him. They weren't unable to retain Jay Hill. Fair. I mean, you get offered a job to be the defensive coordinator at Michigan. There's very few places to go that are more storied and more, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for here? More in the public eye than that defensive coordinator position. Like, the only other places would be like Ohio State, So that's really Notre Dame, I guess. But this is awesome for BYU. It really is. If I could go back in time and tell 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old Matt that it gets better, I would. I would. I really would. So just incredible work recruiting by Kalani Sitake. Everybody who was calling for him to be fired that first Big 12 season, everybody was calling for him to be fired during independence, saying that BYU can do better. No, sweetheart, no. BYU can't do better, and that's why they shelled out so much money to keep him, to keep Penn State away. It's a good thing the Michigan job did not open up before that big time happened for Kalani Sitake, because I don't know if BYU would have been able to retain him there. But I'm just really pleased with what I'm seeing coming out of Provo. Next year could be a special year because Texas Tech is losing a lot of that defensive production to the NFL. And while they do have the money to replace it, I don't know if they have that special secret sauce that they had this year. They will be angry coming into next year. They will be, because of how they went out, especially against a team that was demolished by Indiana in Oregon. But just BYU is looking pretty darn good for next year. All right, let's move on to the Holy War basketball edition. And one thing I was telling everybody who was asking me about this game and just saying, oh, well, Utah is winless in the Big 12. They're 0-2. They lost to Colorado, for heaven's sake. They got blown out by Arizona. The Holy War is weird, okay? Rivalries are weird. BYU hadn't won in the Huntsman Center since 2021. Yeah, and those were some pretty talented teams that never went into the Huntsman Center and won. But this year, thankfully, it was a little bit different. So for this one, BYU comes out with a victory, 89-84, in a game that was back and forth. Utah led for long stretches. BYU, well, not for long stretches, but for stretches of the game. BYU led for long stretches of the game, and Utah kept battling back. So this was a very interesting one couple of things to look out for BYU fans as we move forward through the season. Free throw percentage. They were 19 of 29 from the stripe. That's 66%. That's not going to cut it. So they need to be better from the stripe. 3-point percentage was terrible, especially by Kevin Young standards. 6 of 26 from deep, and most of those makes were by Richie Saunders. That's 23%. That's terrible. In fact, they were outshot percentage-wise by the Utes by 4%. Field goal percentage was really good, 32 of 64, 50%. So, but turnovers 11. That's too many. But again, I will say this again. It was a rivalry game. It was in your rival's place. They showed up and showed out for the game. It was a sold-out Huntsman Center, something we haven't seen in like 100 years, it feels like. There were no tarps over the seats. So, will they run into something like this again? Yeah, the Cougars definitely will. Against Arizona, they will. Against Iowa State, against Houston, Texas Tech, those teams will have barns that will be super loud this year. So BYU needs to really ratchet things up a little bit. As far as rotation is concerned, they went 4 deep on the bench, kind of. Kadeem Boop only played 3 minutes. I know he's coming back from injury, and he's also fighting an illness a little bit. Mihailo Boskovic needs to... I hate this phrase, but he just needs to play a little bit better. He needs to be less out of control. He's energy incarnate for Mihailo Boskovic. He's energy incarnate, but he needs to harness it and keep it under control. And I think he'll be a very good player. Abdullah Ahmed, the G League guy, played 17 solid minutes. He only had 1 point, but he was really out there to play defense. As for the big three showed up and showed out again. 23 points for Rob Wright, 24 for Richie Saunders, 20 for AJ DeBonsa. It was just the big three showing up how they're supposed to. 3-point percentage, DeBonsa was 0 from deep. Rob Wright was 2 for 6. Richie Saunders was 2 for 7. So they've got to tighten that up. They have to. And then Kennard Davis, he needs to score a little bit more. He needs to be more of a threat to make shots, because during the game, all of his shots were from deep, and he was 2 for 7. The defense really isn't going to move to you to prevent that if you're 2 for 7 and that's consistent. So that needs to be tightened up as well. The turnovers, like I said, 3 from AJ DeBonsa, only 1 from Rob Wright. That's pretty good. That was the one bugaboo I wanted to be cleaned up, and it seems like Rob Wright has cleaned it up immensely. Kibakita, I mean, the dude is just... He is a momentum shifter. That spike block, and then at the other end, that massive dunk. He shifts the energy basically by himself. So this BYU team showed grit in a game that needed it. They showed consistency, and they also showed that they can get rattled, but they can bounce back. So I was very impressed from what I saw with this BYU team. Now, to flip the script over to Utah, yes, you are 0-3 in the Big 12. But what this game did is showed you what you can do against other teams in the Big 12. But you're not going to be selling out the Huntsman Center for the rest of the season. You're just not. So how do you bundle up what you have here and take it with you for the rest of the year? Because as we look at the Utes' schedule for the rest of the season here, Texas Tech is up next in Lubbock. TCU is a very good team. Kansas State is solid, and then it's to Provo. So, like, the schedule does not get easier. Terrence Brown, like I told you all before, I get to pat myself on the back for this one. He is worth the price of admission, isn't he? He had a stellar game against the Cougars. 25 points, 10 to 21 shooting, 5 for 5 from the stripe, 5 assists. And he was all over the place. He had 2 blocks. So he is worth the price of admission. Same with Don McHenry. I was pleased by seeing Don McHenry do so well. He scored 21 points, 6-17, so you'd like to see him shoot a little bit better than that. 2 of 8 from deep. Again, Utah, They've got to shore up that 3-point shooting. I don't know if that'll happen this year. It probably won't. But he was 7 of 8 from the stripe, so those guys were hitting free throws where BYU wasn't. Utah shot 86% from the free throw line. Field goal percentage, though, was 46%, so they were sub 50. That usually leads to a loss in pretty much any game. So Terrence Brown, definitely worth the price of admission. Could be a second-round pick coming into the draft this next season. Utah has some stuff. They really do. They showed a lot against BYU. It's near impossible to get up like that for non-rivalry games, especially games where it's not a lottery pick coming into your house. But if they could just show up like 80 to 85% of what they showed against BYU, they could be a top half Big 12 team. I do believe that. Now, there is a lot of weight to be carried by Terrence Brown and Don McHenry, the backcourt of the Utes, but I think they can do it. I do think that this team could be a top half of the Big 12, but they have to show up like 85% of what they used against BYU against every other team in the conference, and I don't know if they're capable of doing so. So they have it in them to be that team. I just don't think, or I'm just not confident that they can pull it out every game, twice a week. So, really weird game. The Holy War is always weird. It's what I always tell everybody when it comes to this game. Even if Utah is the favorite and they've got their own lottery picks, or, like this year where BYU is the favorite, it's always weird. Always weird. You don't know what's going to happen. I never pick a winner in these games. And if I did, I would have said BYU, but I wasn't going to be confident about it. So, really weird game, but fun game to watch, for sure. And the Huntsman Center showed how loud it can really get, and that was fun. Now, to switch gears up to Logan for the Utah State team. This team should be ranked. They really should be. They're 14-1 on the year. One unfortunate loss to South Florida, sure. But 14-1, like their closest win in conference play right now is 9 points when they were at Fresno State. Otherwise, they've just been blowing everybody out, looking great doing it. It's a shared offense. There's not really, MJ Collins is the leader, no doubt, but it's a spread the love. Utah State has their own big three of Mason Falslev, Drake Allen, and MJ Collins. So this team, man, don't sleep on the Aggies. Like, they are going to win the Mountain West. They are. It's just a matter of if they can win the Mountain West tournament and how high of a seed they can get. But if they keep winning like this, their schedule is not all that difficult. Like, their next game is against Nevada, and then it's Grand Canyon. Yeah, I bet you didn't know Grand Canyon was in the Mountain West, unless you're an Aggie fan, then you knew it already. But Grand Canyon University, whose head coach, Bryce Drew, was also the head coach at Vanderbilt for 3 years. So, yeah. Utah State has them coming up. Sneaky, tough game there. But other than that, UNLV is struggling this year. Really, the only test they have, I think, is San Diego State. San Diego State comes to Logan January 31st, and then the immediate game after that is at New Mexico on February 4th. That will show us the mettle of this Utah State team. If they win both of those games, then they're not losing another game for the rest of the year, and they're going to end the season with one regular season loss. Yeah, that's how good this team is. And nobody's really talking about it, and I think the Aggies should be ranked. They are a top 25 team. So, good stuff coming out of Logan. Yet again, they keep doing it. Somehow, they are a basketball powerhouse in the Mountain West Conference, and they will be in the new Pac-12 when that starts up next year. So, good stuff by Utah State. It's just incredible what they're doing there. I'm very impressed. And, yeah, they should be top 25. The best team in the Mountain West. So, really good stuff out of there. All right, so the Utah Jazz, I do want to touch on them. They're horrible. Without Lauri Markkanen, they are the worst team in the NBA, and you can't even argue my point on that. You can't. They just lost at home in the Delta Center to the Charlotte Hornets. So this was not the Detroit Pistons, the San Antonio Spurs, the Oklahoma City Thunder, not even the LA Lakers or the Golden State Warriors. It was the Charlotte freaking Hornets. They lost at home 150-95. So not only did they get blown out by 55 points, they couldn't even break the century mark. Without Lauri Markkanen, this team is garbage. Garbage. So please tell me more about how I need to be more patient with this team and how, they're just going to get better. 13-25, okay, on the season. Just got blown out by a team that has essentially the same record as them. The Charlotte Hornets are 14-25 on the season. So tank note is in full swing. Tank note is going to take off like crazy. And I would not be surprised to see Lauri Markkanen traded. Because he has said he's sick of losing. Walker Kessler has said he's sick of losing. Well, you're not going to be winning here in Salt Lake City. You're not. This team is just not good. They're not even worth watching. They've got some young, talented players. Keontae George is great offensively. Defensively, he's the worst. He's the worst rated defender in the NBA. Yeah, he could put a lot of balls in the bucket, but he's essentially Trae Young, who just got traded from Atlanta to Washington. So, if that's what you want to go see, zero defense, a lot of offense, giving up 127 points per game, the next closest team is the Wizards at 124. So the Jazz give up 3 more points per game than anybody else in the NBA. They score 119, which is league average. My goodness. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. Losing at home to a team that is also trying to tank to get a top pick for, these 4 guys coming out of the draft this year. It's pathetic. It is pathetic. 3-7 in their last 10. All right, that's enough talking about them. It'll just make me angry, and I don't want to get angry today. So let's talk about the Utah Mammoth. The Utah Mammoth are 4-1 in their last 5. They have beaten the Islanders, the Rangers, the Senators, and the Blues. All solid, if unspectacular teams. The Islanders are towards the top of the Metropolitan Division in the Eastern Conference. And they've done it with different guys showing up and scoring goals. It's not just relying on Logan Cooley going off for 4 goals or relying on Nick Schmaltz to go off for a hat trick. It's a lot of guys are showing up and scoring now. And I think this team is finally starting to hit their stride a little bit. And this homestand comes at a crucial time. So it's a 7-game homestand, longest in Utah Mammoth history, by the way. And they've started out by beating Ottawa and St. Louis. Tonight, as of me recording this, they'll be playing against Columbus, who is in last place in the Eastern Conference. And then they play against a struggling Toronto Maple Leafs team who has turned it around a little bit. But overall, this team is really slated to hit the playoffs. They really are. They're 1 point out, again, as of me recording this, behind the LA Kings, who are struggling a lot to score goals. So the remainder of this homestand is crucial. The only game in this homestand that I see them really struggling to win is against Dallas, but they've proven they can hang with the big boys because against Colorado, they've only lost by 1 goal each game that they've lost to them. So they haven't gotten blown out by the best team in the NHL. And then even when they played against Dallas after the death of Clayton Keller's father, they still didn't get blown out. They lost, sure, but they didn't get blown out. So it was 4-3, and it was a game that the Mammoth probably should have won. So, and again, I just want to give kudos to the Dallas Stars organization. They gave Clayton Keller the first star in that game just for playing on the same day that his dad died. So, yeah, I wanted to give them a little shout out because I don't think I did when I recorded that week. So, shout out to them. Really late, but still. So this homestand, crucial. And then recently, I only have like a minute left here, but recently Bill Armstrong was quoted again saying he was going to go big game hunting. What does that mean, Bill? Let us know what that means, please. All right, so that's the episode this week, everybody. Thank you all so much for listening. As always, you are the best people in the world, and I will talk to you next week when we spelunk back into the Mad Cave.